Queen's University who are visiting Parliament Hill today. These students are enrolled in the Masters of Public Administration program at Queen's, which is one of the leading policy study programs in our country. I am happy to have such highly dedicated students within my own riding of Kingston and the Islands, and it is a privilege to represent students from one of Canada's oldest universities. Their multidisciplinary studies focus on policy analysis, development implementation, which will prepare them for rewarding careers in public and private sectors. Previous graduates have gone on to hold positions as ministers and senior officials in municipal, provincial, and federal governments. They also provide leadership in hospitals, community organizations, and national associations across the country. Although they are students today, they are no doubt the leaders of tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member. The honourable member for Edmonton-Griesbach.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy today to make my first statement in this House of Commons. First, I want to thank the residents of Edmonton-Griesbach for electing me, obviously, and I'm proud to represent each and every one of them as their MP and as a member of Her Majesty's official opposition. We have a diverse collection of communities in Edmonton-Griesbach with rich cultures, and I'm very glad for that. But today, I feel it's important to tell this House about some monkey business that's about to happen. Now, don't worry, it has nothing to do with any political shenanigans. I just want to remind everyone that February the 8th is the Lunar New Year, and this is the year of the monkey. So I hope you'll join me, all of you, in extending best wishes to all Canadians who are celebrating the New Year, this, the year of the monkey.
You're here.
The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take advantage of my first member statement to congratulate my colleagues in this House for their election. I'd also like to thank the citizens of my riding, Thérèse de Blainville, for their trust, and I will do my best to carry out my duties with respect, honour, and devotion. I'd also like to point out the exceptional contribution of the volunteers on my team, and I would like to affectionately thank the members of my family. I have experience at the municipal government level, and I will be focusing my energies on 3 issues in the future months. In terms of the economy and employment, the aeronautics sector has many major employers in the Lower Laurentians region, and I will ensure that this activity sector operates well. With regard to health, clearly the regional county municipality of Thérèse de Blainville has had a chronic lack of resources for too long now. We need all the frontline responders that we can get to ensure an acceptable level of service. Transportation. I will look to the completion of Autoroute 19 between Laval and Bois-des-Filions, which has been ongoing for 40 years. I will work with
Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to bring to the House's attention an issue of monumental concern to my constituents and indeed all residents of the lower mainland of British Columbia, the crisis in housing. An entire generation of young people is unable to fulfill their dream of owning their own home. Seniors and families of all types cannot find appropriate housing at a reasonable cost, and renters are being priced right out of Vancouver. This is not only a problem of broken dreams, though. It poses a serious risk to the health of the British Columbian economy. I'm calling on the federal government to recognize this crisis and immediately take steps to address it. It can do this by building affordable housing on federal lands, by renewing co-op funding agreements and expanding co-op stock, and by investigating the impact of foreign capital on housing prices and the use of laundered or corrupt money being parked in Canada's real estate market. Mr. Speaker, every Canadian deserves to live in decent, affordable and secure housing. It is our obligation as legislators to do everything we can to ensure that this is achieved.
Hear, hear.
the Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, today I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to pay a posthumous tribute to a citizen who has marked the history of my riding, La Prairie, and who unfortunately passed away a few weeks ago. Mr. Georges Gagné will have left his mark because he was involved in municipal politics and he was devoted to the citizens of his city, who he represented proudly for 36 years. Elected for the first time at age 49, he took his retirement shortly before he turned 85, thinking that he had achieved what he had set out to do, that is, give the resources his community needed so that it could thrive independently. Today, I join all citizens of Delson to express my deepest sympathies to his family, and I would like to thank them for the numerous years that their father devoted to Delson, the municipality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, I pay tribute today to a man of passion, one of the most influential business people of the Beauce region, Mr. Placide Poulain, who will be receiving the Order of Canada. This inspired and inspiring man of the Beauce, a true Beauceron, is recognized beyond the borders of my region as a leader, a builder, and the founder of the enterprise MAX, and he has advised and encouraged numerous young people. In his 2010 biography entitled The Journey of a Winner, Mr. Poulain said, "When you have a dream, you must do everything you can to make it come true." And he applied himself to make this a rule. He also advocated the practice of important values for success: perseverance, determination, work, and innovation. Mr. Speaker, Placide Poulain has what it takes to be a true Beauceron: a developed spirit of entrepreneurship, a taste for calculated risk and adventure, and he's a bit independent and a bit stubborn. Congratulations, Mr. Poulain.
The Honourable Member for Surrey Centre.
I rise today to recognize the men and women in my riding that day after day, week after week, serve the most vulnerable and needy by providing hot meals, clothing, and even shelter. These organizations, being the Surrey Urban Mission, the Lookout Society, and Gunanak Free Kitchen, work diligently and with minimal resources, but ensure that the most vulnerable of our population never go to sleep hungry. I've had the privilege to visit with these organizations and have firsthand witnessed their positive impact in our community. So, Mr. Speaker, I ask that all members of this House recognize our collective social responsibility and make sure the most vulnerable are not forgotten. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Brampton East.
Mr. Speaker, it is a pleasure to rise in the House today to speak about a big event happening in Canada next month. For the first time in history, the NBA will be hosting an all-star game outside of the United States. The beautiful city of Toronto will be hosting the best players from around the world, including our very own Kyle Lowry from the Toronto Raptors. Basketball is growing in popularity all over our great nation, including my home riding of Brampton East. Sports has always been a way for young Canadians to learn the importance of teamwork, hard work, and dedication. In Brampton East, we have partnered with local youth organizations to host free community drop-in basketball on Sundays. It provides a safe environment, sense of community, and free physical activity for young Canadians who may not be able to access it otherwise. I'd like to invite all members of the House to come shoot some hoop in Brampton East. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, earlier today the Minister of Labour introduced Bill C-4, an act to take away employees' rights to a secret ballot vote. During the last Parliament, I introduced Bill 525, the Employees Voting Rights Act, which gave every worker the right to a mandatory secret ballot vote to determine if they wanted to be in a union or not. Mr. Speaker, after a series of secret closed-door meetings with their big union boss friends, today's announcement shows once again that the Liberals are only in it for their big union boss friends. Mr. Speaker, Canadians elect their politicians with a secret ballot. 5 provinces currently use secret ballots in their labour laws. When unions tried to challenge this in Saskatchewan, Justice Richards said, "The secret ballot, after all, is a hallmark of a modern democracy." He also said a secret ballot regime does no more than ensure that all employees are able to make the choices they see as being best for themselves. Mr. Speaker, we're getting a clearer picture of how the Liberals think when it comes to the democratic process and the outcomes of elections. They apparently only support models that ensure they get the outcomes they want.
The
Honourable Member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
I'd like to highlight the accomplishments of one of my constituents, This past December, Mark Balavie at Hudson, Quebec was awarded the Governor General's Meritorious Service Decoration. As we know, this decoration is awarded to recognize remarkable contributions of those who are true mentors, those that have improved the quality of life of their community, and those who have brought honour to Canada. Mr. Balavie, along with his partner, founded Canada Cycles for Kids. This unique organization pairs a passion for cycling with a willingness to raise much-needed funds by organizing cross-Canada fundraising cycling tours. To date, Mr. Balavie has raised over $500,000 to benefit the Children's Wish Foundation of Canada. I wish him the best of luck on behalf of this House, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The honourable member for La Salle d'Orval-La Chine. 100 years ago, the women of Manitoba got the right to vote for the first time. Nellie McClung and her companions devoted numerous years to this effort. Their demands remained unanswered, but they continued. In January 1916, the right to vote was granted to certain women in Manitoba. Then the federal government and other provinces did the same. All women received the vote in 1940, and in 1960 was regularized so that Aboriginal women could vote as well. This landmark anniversary is the time to be aware of the numerous of the work we still have to do. Many women are still underrepresented in senior positions, and they are too often victims of violence. Our Prime Minister has...
For Portage Lisgar.
Today marks an important milestone for Canadians. 100 years ago, Manitoba women were the first in Canada to be given the right to vote. Nellie McClung and the rest of the famous five were instrumental in helping women get the right to vote in Manitoba and eventually across Canada. Nellie McClung actually lived for a short time in a small community called Manitou, right in my riding of Portage Lisgar. I'm very, very proud to have such a large and important part of history in my riding. Today, more than ever before, women are in prominent leadership roles across the country. We are leaders among the G20 when it comes to female participation in the workforce. We are leading the way when it comes to education levels and standard of living. Being such leaders gives us a great opportunity to help women in other countries who are suffering and don't have the same rights and opportunities we have in Canada. As Canadian women, it is our responsibility to continue to make strides to inspire the young women that come after us, just like Nellie McClung and the famous five did before us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Niagara Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, twice this month I had the pleasure of speaking with municipal and business and community leaders from across the riding of Niagara Centre and the Greater Niagara region as well about the government's upcoming budget and infrastructure investments. Mr. Speaker, I had great success working with this team. Mr. Speaker, as more than 60 community organizations and businesses participated in the discussions, as well as elected leaders from all 12 municipalities throughout the Niagara region. I would like to thank the Parliamentary Secretary, to the Minister of Finance for lending his support, his expertise to these discussions. Thank you, Francois. I would also like to thank everyone in Niagara who attended the pre-budget consultation, Mr. Speaker, for their valuable input, and I look forward to the opportunity to continue to bring the many voices of Niagara Centre here to be heard in this House here in Ottawa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Churchill-Kiwatanuk-Aski.
Mr. Speaker, on January 28, 1916, Manitoba women became the first in Canada to win the right to vote and the right to hold provincial office. A historic achievement and the result of decades of struggle led by women like M.J. Benedictson and later on Nellie McClung. Unfortunately, First Nations women fought much longer to receive the right to vote in our province and our country. As a Manitoban, I am proud of the way Manitoba women and Manitoba feminists have blazed the trail from voting to human rights legislation to family law to childcare and access to abortion. Today, we acknowledge the women who fought decades ago and who fight every day for equality. And the fight must go on. We must put an end to the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous women, to sexual violence against all women, to pay inequity, to poverty, to the lack of reproductive services, and the continued discrimination that Indigenous, racialized, disabled, lesbian, and trans women face every day. So today, let's be inspired by Manitoba women and take action to make gender equality a reality for us all.
The Honourable Member from Montmagny-Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, it is time to focus specifically on the transport of oil via pipeline. Of all ways of transporting oil, pipeline remains the safest thanks to its high technical standards in terms of both public safety and environmental protection. In Quebec alone, we're talking about several hundred jobs that are created, which generate stable revenues for many families, and more than $900 million in tax revenues, without even counting the development phase of the project. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister must show leadership on this matter and consult workers who are the first victims of this red tape. We are in a period of an unstable economy, so we need to support our projects that create wealth and support our families. It is not in any way, shape, or form time to stop this process.
Member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate the 100th year of women's suffrage in Canada. On this day, a century ago, a savvy group of Manitoba women succeeded in their campaign to give women the right to vote and hold political office. First in Manitoba, 3 years later at the federal level, and only by the mid-20th century for Indigenous peoples. While we have made great strides since then, including gender parity in cabinet, in 2016 we still have glass ceilings to break. Women in this House represent 26%. That places Canada at number 49 in the world, behind such countries as Afghanistan, Sudan, and Iraq. Together, with multi-party groups such as Equal Voice, we will work toward real parity in all aspects of public life.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, our Conservative Party oversaw the approval of 4 major pipeline projects which created jobs in every region. Now, yesterday, the Prime Minister showed the hundreds of thousands of people out of work across the country that the Liberal government doesn't understand the problem. The Prime Minister's plan is to add more levels of red tape and a never-ending series of moving goalposts. Will the Prime Minister admit his new process is simply designed to block job-creating energy projects?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
In the 21st century, the only way to get big projects like pipelines built is to do them responsibly and sustainably. That's the lesson we learned from 10 years of the members opposite being unable to deliver for the province of Alberta, unable to get resources to Tidewater.
Member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, it seems that the Prime Minister is going to devastate the Western economy with his own NEP, the No Energy Program.
Right.
We are debating a Conservative motion today that sends a clear signal of support to out-of-work Canadians. The thousands of families who are enduring job losses need a champion to promote projects that will get them back to work. The Prime Minister promised more free votes. Will he allow his members from Saskatchewan, Alberta, and New Brunswick to stand up and vote freely? Will he free the member for West Canada?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The motion the members opposite put forward is simply a rehash of their failed policies of the past 10 years. Well, not only did Canadians vote against those policies in the last election, we will vote against that policy today in the House of Commons.
The member for Regina Capel.
Mr. Speaker, you can't create jobs by inventing new obstacles and barriers. The Liberal plan announced yesterday does nothing to streamline the assessment process or to make it more effective. Hundreds of thousands of families are desperate. The Energy East project would be good for Quebec's economy. Why is the Prime Minister more concerned about what celebrities think than what unemployed Canadians think? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, even after 10 years of failure by the Conservative Party, they still don't understand that you can't create projects without community acceptance, without acceptance by Indigenous people and proper processes. They refuse to accept that their approach does not work. Canadians and Albertans deserve better.
The honourable member for Portage Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Liberal government said that upstream greenhouse gas emissions will be part of the transition assessment, but then the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change said that downstream GHGs would also be part of that assessment. Did the Minister misspeak, and can she confirm that downstream emissions will not be considered in the transition process announced yesterday or in the permanent new process that will be announced at a later date?
The honourable Minister of the Environment.
I would like to make it very clear that we consider our climate change obligations to be very serious. We have been clear that in this process we will, in our new interim principles, we will include upstream greenhouse gas emissions. I'm also very happy to announce that I'm meeting with the environment ministers from across the country today, where we are framing our new pan-Canadian climate change plan, which will include consideration of downstream greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you.
The honourable member for Portage Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, still more uncertainty for people whose jobs are in the balance, unfortunately. Now, there's another area of confusion with the announcement yesterday. The government said additional roadblocks would be in place for Kinder Morgan and Energy East. They also said that the minister will look at all other projects underway in the NEB process and determine if those proponents would also need this additional assessment, which would look like more interference. Can the minister tell us how he will determine which other job-creating programs and projects will have to undergo this red tape?
Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday Canadians were offered a brand new image. And that was the image of the Minister of the Environment and the Minister of Natural Resources standing next to each other, talking about sustainably developing the energy sector in the Canadian economy. And since then, many Canadians have told us, provincial leaders, industry leaders, environmentalists and others, that this is the better approach and the only way in the long term to develop our resources.
The honourable member for Outremont.
Speaker, next week the Prime Minister intends to sign a conservative trade deal that was negotiated in secret. But in spite of calling for transparency before the election, the Liberals still haven't released an economic impact study on the deal. In fact, according to recent reports, the Liberals are saying they can't find any economic impact study on the TPP. Meanwhile, independent studies have suggested that the TPP could cost Canada as many as 60,000 good jobs. Can the Prime Minister explain why he is willing to sign this deal without having seen an economic impact statement when tens of thousands of good Canadians...
The Right Honourable the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, trade creates jobs for the middle class and growth for the Canadian economy, and that's why we are a pro-trade party. On the TPP deal, we have consistently said throughout the campaign and since that we will consult with Canadians and allow parliamentarians an opportunity to discuss the impacts on their regions and on the future of this country. In order to do so, however, we can't stop debate on it, and therefore we will be signing it as a way to consider it through ratification.
The honourable member for Outremont. This agreement is bad for workers, bad for farmers, bad for creators. At a time when the economy is suffering, nearly 60,000 jobs are at stake with the signature of the TPP. For somebody who was elected on a promise of openness and change, apparently the government has no problem signing an agreement that was negotiated in secret. Canadians know that signing an agreement means you intend to support it. Does the Prime Minister often sign things that he doesn't agree with? The Honourable Prime Minister. Well, once again, I haven't been given an opportunity to explain to the member opposite that signing an agreement and ratifying it are two things completely different. In order to study the proposal, we have to sign it to be able to go to the next step. We want to debate it here in the House, and this is why we are going to sign it. Mr. Speaker, thousands of Canadian families are struggling. They don't have a job, they aren't eligible for employment insurance, they don't have adequate housing. But according to the Minister of Social Development, they are just going to have to wait. Inequality is increasing in our society, but the government has chosen to give priority to reducing taxes for the well-off. Does the Prime Minister agree with his minister that all of these people will just have to wait? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Since January 1st, 2016, thousands of Canadians are receiving higher paychecks because we have reduced taxes for the middle class. We've increased taxes at the same time for the 1% that are the richest. The people who are doing very well are being asked to do a little bit more to help those that aren't, and this is a principle we all agree with. Honourable Member for Outremont.
In fact, Mr. Speaker, in the first 100 days since the election, it was tax breaks for the rich that made the list of urgent priorities, because if you make $200,000 a year, you got the maximum benefit. A family earning $45,000 got nothing. But low-income seniors have also been left struggling with their rent and with rising grocery bills. This, in spite of Liberal campaign promises to boost the guaranteed income supplement, quote, immediately. Now, the Minister of Social Development warns, quote, there will be things that will have to wait. So the question is clear. Is it immediately or tough luck this time?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian people elected this government with a clear mandate to support our seniors, to grow the middle class, to give help to those who need it by asking those who are doing well to do a little bit more. That's exactly what we're going to do, and I look forward to our Finance Minister presenting a budget that includes help for seniors, investments in infrastructure, and growth for the middle class.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a bad day for Canadian democracy and accountability. This morning, the government said that it would eliminate two pieces of legislation, that is about the secret vote for unions, and another law. The government wants to thank the big bosses for giving money to them to fight the Conservatives in the election. So how can this Prime Minister agree with this lack of accountability and democracy?
Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was my pleasure to today try to right some of the wrongs of the past. Earlier today, I introduced legislation in this House to repeal Bill C-377 and 525, both a direct attack on the Canadian labour movement. Our government intends to...
Sorry.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, when there isn't proper answers because there are problems with transparency, because we learned something this morning. We heard from the Commissioner of Elections that there were non-monetary contributions made to the Liberals that may be ineligible. So they want to reduce accountability. And how come this has not been made public?
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker,
inform the House that we have introduced two bills to respond to attacks on the labour movement that were unwarranted, uncalled for, and undemocratic. This was not called for by industry or labour. The repealing of these two bills will bring back fairness and balance.
Now, the member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, it's obvious that the minister doesn't have, she's confused where her priorities should be. Why? Well, it's come to light today that the Liberals received illegal union donations during the election. And this morning, the minister was repaying her union friends. She announced the Liberal government has made it their priority to remove accountability and transparency from government. This Liberal government had no intentions to keep their commitment for accountability and transparency. Why is it important to reward union leaders rather than come up with a plan to get Canadians back to work?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the member knows full well that confusing a meritorious public policy and legislative change with an accident that happened during the election in terms of compliance. And Mr. Speaker, let's be very clear. At the very moment that this was brought to our attention, the party followed the law, reimbursed the Receiver General, and the appropriate union signed a compliance agreement with the Commissioner. That's something that the members opposite had a very difficult time doing.
Yesterday was really good, folks. Let's get back to that nice tone of respect. It's tough because we hear things we don't like sometimes, you know? But I'm sure in private meetings that happens too. And we can control ourselves. So let's try to do that. And let's listen to the Honourable Member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, what is very clear is why the Liberals' priority is to reward union leadership. Just today, we found out that the unions illegally donated to the Liberals' campaign. It is no wonder that the Liberals want to hide this information from Canadians by repealing legislation that imposes transparency and accountability on union members. Mr. Speaker, why do the Liberals have so much time to defend union leadership but no time to come up with a plan to get Canadians, to get Albertans back to work?
Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It appears that there was a lot of time spent by the previous government looking at unfair, unjust attacks on the labour movement. In this case, we're looking at a bill that was put together which attacks the labour movement, makes it more difficult to certify and much easier to decertify. That is not fair and balanced, and these bills need to be repealed.
Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the government seems blindly determined to normalise relations with the Iranian regime, I wonder whether the Minister of Foreign Affairs is aware of the latest poisonous utterances by the regime's supreme leader. Yesterday, on International Holocaust Day, Ayatollah Khamenei posted a video on his website questioning the slaughter of 6 million Jews by the Nazis. Does the minister really believe he can engage in a meaningful dialogue with a regime that not only denies history but regularly calls for the destruction of Israel?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the Honourable Member, who I had the pleasure of meeting last night at the Parl-Americas conference, where our diplomacy was in fine form. As Minister Dion has stated, Canada needs to engage on the international stage. I apologize for mentioning the minister's name. As the minister has stated, Canada needs to engage on the international stage much more than before. Engagement takes different forms, and in our case, it doesn't mean that we agree with all of Iran's policies by any stretch, but it is a pathway towards economic opportunity and dialogue and possibly regional security, and we are not going to give up.
Thank you. This is a good chance to remind those who give advice to parliamentary secretaries or those drafting questions to refer to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and not to the name of the minister, but I'm glad the member noted that as she replied. Member for Thornhill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, given the government's these vague intentions to end sanctions against Iran, it's time for some specific answers. Which of Canada's 24 prohibitions against the Iranian regime does the government plan to lift? Given new U.S. sanctions provoked by Iran's ballistic missile tests, will Canada now look the other way as Iran works on a weapon aimed at Israel? And finally, Mr. Speaker, does the government really intend to delist Iran as a state sponsor of terrorism?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for the question. We are absolutely currently reviewing our sanctions against Iran, and as part of this review, we are exercising rigour in ensuring that any changes do not open the door to trade in proliferation-sensitive goods and services, of course. However, we are acting in concert with our allies, like the UN, like the United States, like Europe. We feel it's an important signal. Our foreign policy is based on talking, something which the opposition was not that good at in
the past. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. The Minister of Environment will be meeting with her provincial colleagues to talk about climate change. Since coming back to Paris, though, she hasn't said what Canada's targets would be. Yesterday, the minister announced a new climate test for pipelines without indicating what GHG levels would be acceptable. Mr. Speaker, can the minister confirm whether the government will present more ambitious targets or whether it will stick to those presented by Stephen Harper? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my colleague for her question. It is very important that we have a Canada-wide plan to make sure that we fight climate change. And this is what we are doing. I'm very pleased that I will be meeting with my counterparts from across the country to discuss climate change. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, in December at the Climate Change Conference in Paris, Canada committed to a 1.5-degree rise in global temperatures. Yesterday, the minister announced pipeline reviews that would include climate tests, but couldn't say what a pass or fail would actually look like. A test only matters, Mr. Speaker, if you know how you're being graded. The minister knows full well that current provincial efforts are not enough to meet the weak goal that Canada currently has. Canadians want to know what the real impact could a climate test have for a government that doesn't even have a climate target.
Wow. The Honourable Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the honourable member for joining me in Paris for the climate conference and for his useful comments. We are committed to taking action on climate change. That is why I'm meeting today with my colleagues from across the country to talk about what a pan-Canadian plan would be. It would be irresponsible to come up with a new target without actually having a plan to implement it, as the Conservatives did. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, economists with the National Bank announced that there would be a $50 billion deficit by the federal government over the next 2 years. But the Minister of Finance seems to be applying old rules by wanting to put stimulus in place to create more prosperity, thinking that the country is actually going to create wealth this way. So why is he applying old theories and creating more debt for the government? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we now know that the level of economic growth is lower than predicted, and this is why we have to have a plan to deal with the situation. We have lowered taxes for the middle class, and millions of Canadians will have more money in their pockets. The second step will be as important for the economy, and that will be the Canadian Child Benefit that will help hundreds of thousands of children in poverty. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance has no credibility. During the election campaign, he said that he was going to give tax cuts, but in fact, he has added billions of dollars to the deficit. If the government wants to create wealth, they should start by creating the economic conditions that will be productive and helpful to small business and not in debt, create more debt. You need to reduce public spending. The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we have a plan to grow the economy, and we have already started. In the 2016 budget, we will be introducing infrastructure spending that will help the economy grow and will increase economic growth.
A member for Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance was wrong when he said his government had inherited a deficit. His own department states that from April to October, the federal government posted a surplus of $600 million. It's in black and white, posted publicly on their website and available for all to see. We Conservatives left a surplus. Did the Parliamentary Secretary, in answering my question, willfully mislead the House? And if so, will he stand in his place, correct the record, and apologize?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity in December to introduce an economic and fiscal update to make absolutely clear the situation that we inherited from the members across the aisle. We inherited a deficit of $3 billion. 10 failed years of low growth have led us to a situation where we have failed to make the investments that will allow us to grow the economy. We have a new plan, one that will lead us to a place where we can actually grow the economy to put Canadians in a better place in the future.
The Honourable Member for Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, it's shocking to hear this wrongful denial. The Liberals can't even get a handle on their own baseline numbers. His own department is reporting $600 million surplus for the first half of 2015, and the Parliamentary Budget Officer forecasted a $1.2 billion surplus for the year. Yet the Finance Minister and the Parliamentary Secretary appear to be working off a different set of numbers. These are taxpayers' dollars, and Canadians deserve transparency. Can the Parliamentary Secretary explain where he got his numbers?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians decided in October that they do, in fact, deserve transparency. They elected a new government that committed to being fair, open, and transparent. We immediately came out with an update to the numbers so that Canadians could understand the situation that we are actually in. We have seen a continued deterioration in our economic situation, which is a result of 10 years of failed policies. Happily for Canadians, we can now move to a new set of policies that will make a real difference for the future of this country.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavik. Mr. Speaker, for years the federal government has systematically discriminated against Aboriginal children. In order to implement this week's decision, concrete action is needed immediately. A cultural shift must occur now throughout government. There are still cases before the courts regarding access to education and health care. What concrete action has the government taken since Tuesday to respect the rights of Aboriginal children at long last?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Indigenous Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for the question. We realize the chronic underfunding that have existed in First Nations for many First Nations children. We're very concerned about this, and for the first time, our government is in a position to be able to take action. We, Mr. Speaker, are committed to investing more in First Nations children in Canada so that they too can have that equal opportunity as all other Canadian children.
The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, on the very day that the Human Rights Tribunal ruled on the systemic discrimination against Indigenous children, officials in Health Canada told a little Indigenous girl named Kendall that they wouldn't pay for badly needed orthodontic surgery. Now, Kendall also has an ocular tumor and needs special drops to save her vision. And the response from the officials was, absolutely not. And I asked myself as a parent, how is that possible? So to the health minister, what steps has she taken to issue directives to her ministers to make it right for Kendall and all the other children who are still being denied basic rights every single day?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, this House has heard repeatedly that our government is absolutely committed to restoring the inequitable status that many Indigenous peoples have faced, both in childcare, in healthcare, and in many other capacities. I will certainly look into the situation that the honourable member has brought to my attention. I will look into that and bring back news to the House with details as to how we will respond.
The honourable member for Avignon-Lamitis, Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, workers in my riding of Avignon-Lamitis, Matane-Matapédia, as well as workers throughout the country, have seen their rights violated over the past 10 years because of the Conservatives' anti-union approach. Can the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Labour share with this House the measures that this government will undertake to better protect the rights of workers?
What?
The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to inform the House that today we announced legislation to repeal 2 bills that attacked labour movement by the former Conservative government, and that these 2 bills will restore fairness and balance to the workplace, encouraging a stronger economy, which I hope every member of this House is working towards.
The honourable member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the minister said that with regard to the Syrian Refugee Initiative, the government had, quote, briefed the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Ambassador to Canada, and that there is a, quote, very open line of communication directly to the White House. Mr. Speaker, what was the scope of these briefings? Who is the government communicating with in the White House administration? And have American officials raised any concerns with the government plan? And if so, what are they?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, very early in the going, as we were putting together the Syrian Refugee Initiative, we were communicating in a steady way with the American administration. They submitted a number of inquiries, which we were able to answer satisfactorily, and the line of communications remains open to this day. If they have a concern, they're perfectly entitled to raise it, and we will make sure that the issues are properly addressed, as they are, Mr. Speaker.
For Calgary-Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, Section 94 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act requires the government to annually present to Parliament a report which includes the government's desired immigration levels. Even in 2008, when a general election was held in October, this report was tabled on November 28th of that year. Today is January 28th, a full 2 months later than this report has ever been tabled since the Act came into force. Is the government delaying its release because it will show a significant reduction to provincial nominee program levels and other economic immigration streams?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question, and I assure her that the Levels Plan will indeed be presented to Parliament well before the deadline date. We are working on this, and one of the things to come out of it, as I mentioned earlier, is an astounding, unacceptable increase in the processing times, particularly for spouses, and that is one of the things that will come out of our plan, a determined effort to bring down those processing times which skyrocketed under 10 years of Conservative rule.
The honourable member for Markham-Unionville.
Is nobody correcting me? Mr. Speaker, Syrian refugees are being abandoned by this government in cramped temporary accommodations. Can the minister confirm if, in fact, in London, Ontario, one of the hotels in which these refugees are being housed is located next door to a gentleman's club which features exotic dancers. And can the minister tell Canadians how much these so-called temporary accommodations are costing taxpayers?
Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I can assure the member that my government looks into every item of that nature. But I think that the best summary is provided by a refugee from Syria currently staying in a Toronto hotel, who was reported in today's media as with the following statement: "I'm just happy to be here. The tiny room I had in Lebanon was not safe. I'm suffering in Lebanon for 2 years. Compared to there, this is heaven. Of course, we all want to settle down quickly, but the wait is okay." And that's from a refugee, and it's a very good answer.
I would encourage all members to assist the Speaker in maintaining order by choosing their words carefully. The honourable member from Markham Unionville.
Mr. Speaker, Prime Minister claimed that bringing 25,000 Syrian refugees to Canada was only a matter of political will. Well, from November 1st to December 14, 2015, the government brought in a grand total of 105 government-assisted Syrian refugees. Can the minister explain why they broke their biggest election promise and now see government-sponsored refugees spending weeks in hotels as a perfectly normal?
Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, it seems the Conservatives have trouble figuring out whether we're doing it too fast or too slow. But as I have said to Canadians many times, it is more important to do it right than to do it fast. And we are certainly doing it right, Mr. Speaker, in terms of security and health. And I can guarantee Canadians that the full 25,000 Syrian refugees will be on Canadian soil before the end of February.
The honourable member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, Liberals and Conservatives have approved thousands of takeovers of our companies by foreign interests. Recently, Allstream, a Canadian company that owns a fibre optic network containing confidential data about thousands of Canadians, was sold to a U.S. corporation. The consequence is that sensitive information is now under American surveillance. Why did the government authorize this sale without a review that was based on our national security?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know that the honourable member was not part of the team that made up the government after October 19th, but she might not be aware that every foreign investment in a Canadian corporation is subject to rigorous review by Investment Canada. So that's all I can say on this subject. Because of this legislation, I can't go into commercial trade secrets.
Speaker, the Liberals and Conservatives have rubber-stamped countless foreign takeovers, and it seems the new government will be no different. Manitoba's Allstream owns a fibre optic network that carries confidential information of the federal government and countless Canadians. But the Liberals just stood by as it was sold to an American company, putting that information at risk to U.S. surveillance. The previous government blocked an earlier attempt based on national security concerns. So why is the Liberal minister refusing to do a review to protect Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, security screening is part of the process. That's in the law, and the Government of Canada follows the law.
The Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2010, the previous Conservative government passed legislation to ensure that convicted child sexual predators would never be able to apply for a pardon. Now, this week, Canadians were horrified to see that an infamous serial child rapist was granted day parole. Now, the Minister of Public Safety has indicated that the government will make it easier for criminals like that to get pardons. Mr. Speaker, why would the Liberal government do that?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, public safety is always the consideration. We will look at the changes that were made by the previous government in terms of the waiting times, in terms of the fees that were charged, to see if they are effective actually in the administering of public policy or whether they were intended for some other purpose. We will base our decisions on evidence, Mr. Speaker, not on ideology and not on bias.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, the survivors of Graham James and other child sexual predators will never be able to forget the crimes inflicted upon them. Mr. Speaker, we were reminded of this week when Graham James was granted parole. Mr. Speaker, why is this government standing up for the rights of criminals like Graham James instead of their survivors?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the issue arising most recently with respect to James is a parole matter, not a pardon. And I would indicate to the House, Mr. Speaker, that the pardon previously granted to this particular offender was a decision of the previous government.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, there are 16 children in the Democratic Republic of Congo who have been adopted by Canadian families. They are waiting for exit visas, and the DRC has refused to issue them. Now there is legislation before the Congolese Parliament that could force these Canadian families to wait years more. So, to the Prime Minister, will you pick up the phone, call President Kabila, and request 16 exit visas?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Consular Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member for his question. This is an important matter that our government is seized with. Our Foreign Affairs Minister has been in contact with the Foreign Affairs Minister of the Republic of Congo, and we have raised this issue. We will continue to monitor the situation, and we'll follow up with them and make sure that any new changes will be reported to the House. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Northwest Territories.
Speaker, residents in my riding of Northwest Territories, as well as other northern and remote parts of Canada, live with the reality of a comparably very high cost of living. One way to help address this challenge is through our tax system, specifically the Northern Residence Deduction. Could the Minister of National Revenue please advise the House of the commitment to increase the Northern Residence Deduction?
Minister of National Revenue.
I'd like to thank the voters of Gaspésie de la Madeleine who placed their trust in me to represent them. And I thank my colleague from the Northwest Territories for his question. As stipulated during the election campaign, the increase in the deduction for residents of the North is a priority. They can count on our government so that families in isolated region can continue to benefit from the economic development of Canada. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, on January 15th, 6 Canadians from the Quebec City region lost their lives in a terrorist attack in Burkina Faso. Since the beginning of this drama, this government has not been up to it. They were not present at the vigil in memory of the victims. The minister from the region of Quebec refused to confirm his presence at the funeral. The citizens of the Quebec City region are eager to see this government be interested in them while respecting the privacy of the families. Can the minister save face for his government and confirm that the Prime Minister or one of the ministers will be at the funeral? The Honourable Minister of Social Development. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for this question. It gives me an opportunity to point out how much I and the Government of Canada has been moved by the sadness and suffering of the families in Quebec City in a context where these deaths happened in extremely difficult circumstances, thousands of miles from home. that was a tragedy for the families and friends and for the whole Quebec City region and for the Canadian government. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Prime Minister stated that during the election campaign, he had made a commitment to imposing a moratorium on changes at Canada Post. That's strange because we all remember that the Prime Minister, standing next to Mayor Coderre, said, "We are committed to restoring home mail delivery." Will the Minister keep the Prime Minister's word and restore home mail delivery, or is this a broken promise?
The Honourable Minister of Procurement and Public Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her question. We are committed to carrying out an independent review of Canada Post, which will look at every entity, every aspect of Canada Post. It will be done independently, and I can't imagine that my colleague would be averse to that. It's important that we have a Canada Post that delivers services that Canadians expect and at a reasonable cost.
The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, during the election campaign, I was proud of our commitment to take action so that permanent residency be granted without delay to spouses that are sponsored for immigration in Canada. Many citizens in my riding are hoping that these regulatory changes will allow them to see their loved ones that they sometimes haven't seen for years. Can the Minister of Immigration inform us of his intention regarding this issue? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. I thank my colleague for his very good question. Quite clearly, given the conditional nature of the entry of these spouses, they are vulnerable. They are vulnerable to domestic abuse because they have no status here in Canada. Therefore, the government is determined to changing that so that all spouses who enter Canada can be permanent residents immediately.
The Honourable Member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, when I asked the Minister a couple days ago about why the government has baked so much secrecy into its Senate appointment process, she responded by hiding behind the courts. Her suggestion that the courts have interpreted the Constitution to require secrecy at any, let alone at all stages of the appointment process is just wrong. What the Supreme Court actually says in paragraph 50 of its Senate reference ruling is that the practice of appointing senators on the advice of the Prime Minister is nothing more than a non-justiciable convention. So, given that the courts don't require it, what's the real reason for all this secrecy?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I don't share the Honourable Member's cynicism, and with good reason. The new independent, nonpartisan, merit-based, open and transparent process we've introduced is in the capable hands of 9 eminent Canadians who make up the advisory board. Individuals like Dr. Dawn Lavelle-Harvard, President of the Native Women's Association of Canada. We believe that the presence of new nonpartisan senators will enhance the effectiveness of this important democratic institution.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, in Paris, the Prime Minister made a commitment to fighting climate change. Yesterday, the government stated it wanted to take into account the increase in greenhouse gases related to the Trans-Canada Pipeline project. In addition to putting at risk 800 Quebec waterways, this project will increase the production of oil from the oil sands by 40% with the ancillary greenhouse gas emissions. When will the Prime Minister realize that construction of this pipeline goes against the objectives he set in Paris? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are very proud of our work in Paris with an ambitious accord. I was accompanied by my colleagues from all parties. Our government will restore Canadians' trust in environmental assessments. We will look at greenhouse gas emissions. That's part of our assessment process, and we'll make sure that we earn Canadians' trust. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, Radio-Canada CBC was subjected to major financial cuts in the past few years, imperiling the quality of programming as well as access to information in the regions of Quebec. During the election campaign and since the election, the Liberals committed on numerous occasions to restoring and improving the funding allocated to CBC Radio-Canada. On behalf of the artisans and especially the public, I'm asking the Minister whether or not she is committed to keeping her word by injecting money into CBC. The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to thank my honourable colleague for her important question and reassure the House that we will reinvest in Radio-Canada CBC because we believe in it, contrary to the previous government. And that's why I've worked with stakeholders to make sure we hold consultations about how we can best support CBC Radio-Canada in this digital age.
I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Brian Kenny, Minister of the Environment and Local Government for the Province of New Brunswick. And the Honourable Tom Navakshinov, Minister of Conservation and Water Stewardship for the Province of Manitoba. I would also like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of the winners of the $1 million 2016 Arctic Inspiration Prize, consisting of members from the group Fostering Open Expression Among Youth. I would like to take this opportunity to remind all members that as part of the members' orientation program, the service fair is taking place today until 4 p.m. in the committee rooms off the Hall of Honor area. The service fair features more than 30 kiosks presenting key resources available to you and your employees to help you manage your offices and carry out your parliamentary work. J'aimerais profiter de cette occasion.
I'd like to take this opportunity to remind all members that as part of members' orientation, the service fair is taking place today until 4 p.m. in the committee rooms off the Hall of Honor. The service fair includes more than 30 kiosks showcasing the resources available to you, as well as your employees, in order to help you to manage your offices and to do your work as parliamentarians.
Colleagues, order. Order, alors. I encourage members to take their discussions behind the curtains or into the lobbies. We'll wait a moment or two for the Thursday question. Right. right after question period is, and I want to say to the House leaders who can pass this on to the whips, that right